Hello there everyone and welcome back. This is probably going to be my final episode with my focus ranking up on Imperial Navy. Although, don't get me wrong, I actually do quite enjoy this fleet composition I have. It's just a matter of fine tuning things and getting the most out of it. Since I like the Overlords just because there's additional resilience is a big boon, and one of these matches I feel like the capture speed, well hell, it's been a demonstration of even some of the previous matches. Just having that increased capture speed can help alleviate the tension or how close a match can be when it comes down to like the objectives being captured. So I feel like the Overlord can be easily overlooked in that potential. And with that said, we're going to be dealing with Alara Nova. I can't even remember how to pronounce that, to be honest, but either way, this is the opponent we played against before. They were legendary rank, and we're going to be dealing with, was it an all Grand Cruiser type of fleet? All Avengers at that, which is going to be an interesting treat since I did talk about the Grand Cruisers a little bit before, although our opponent was only like a mix of half Grand Cruisers and then half carrier ships, so it may not have been the best representation, but even then, I feel like I have the long range firepower because again, their macro cannons are devastating and close, but they don't have the range, never mind the fact they don't have torpedoes or any dorsal weapons that kind of be intimidating when they get in close. So that might be a factor here. And if I can get some really good torpedo hits in, especially like early on, relatively for free, and by free I mean just not at risk of close range engagement, then that softens them up nicely for me. In the Grand Cruiser's appearance, we see the armor-piercing ammo, the prow, and I do prioritize the engines because I'm wondering if... I don't think it's tipped off yet if these are Grand Cruisers. I'm wondering if they're still the Dictators from the last time I played off against them. It's a possibility we're not going to know until the frigate goes on by to reveal them, since I don't believe there's actually a single frigate in this fleet, since after all we are again talking about 6 Avengers, so they don't really have much room for anything else after all. And do I even launch fighters to kind of, no, I think I withhold the fighters, since again, I'm kind of wondering if they are Dictators, if they are torpedoes and all that. And hell, you see a little subtle thing there, I try and switch the heading a tiny bit on my cruisers to kind of prepare for possible torpedo runs. Although, I don't like to waste my torpedoes because, especially if they are the Dictators at this point, there's still that uncertainty, and if they launch fighters, then I'm not really getting a lot of value from them. They're gonna, if we've seen firsthand how quickly they can get shot down with 5 squadrons worth of fighter bays, but we're gonna know shortly. I'm gonna be checking repeatedly to see what kind of range we are, even without the lock-on stance. Since I want to get whatever free damage I can, since that was the big flaw of the Dictator fleet I want to argue, is that I can do decent damage to them at range, and if I have my fighters in brace for impact stance, I can at least weather their torpedoes and fighters decently well at the same time. But I'm not going to scanner pulse, I'm not going to tip off this things here, especially with the proximity of the gas clouds. So we're going to be face checking it as it were. We're going to be using our sensor to kind of detect these ships for the time being. And then see what damage we can do. And this is where the Grand Cruisers are revealed. I think I immediately switch over to lock-on stance and start taking my damage there. Although, with the realization I don't have to worry about torpedoes so much, I probably could have switched my priority to destroying the decks there. It's still focusing on the engines, but that may not be terrible, especially if I get early engine critical hit on these Grand Cruisers. It's going to be difficult to do, of course, since they have that ridiculous resilience to complement it. But I do a hard 180-degree turn. I kind of forfeit the points of assault, but I'm content to try and get what damage I can off here. Any free damage is good damage here, especially since they don't have 83 prow anywhere to kind of absorb this damage the best. So I'm hoping this works out well for me. And I do have, well, even though I did not get an opportunity to really fire torpedoes, I don't really like firing torpedoes on the prow anyway. Since it's so narrow, it's tricky to hit, at least do damage that kind of sticks a lot of the time. never mind, it could very easily put me in a very awkward prediction just because of the amount of time it takes to turn back to a broadside arc without using my combustion gauge. But we're still hitting the Grand Cruiser. What is it, only 200 health I think? Maybe 400 health's been taken off that thing, so it is slowly getting chipped down. And I'm trying to utilize the station spawn to give me a little bit of a breathing room, and I'm actually going to fire torpedoes on this one flagship here that is pursuing after my frigate at the moment. I was hoping to have it neutralize the point, but it wasn't really meant to be. They're immediately going to turn around, and since this thing does have a micro warp jump, it at least helps to keep out of the fight for the time being, if only slightly. But again, with the lack of frigates, it's not like they can jump me very well anyway, from this distance at least. So I'm trying to manage this frigate a tiny bit, since really I think this can dodge the macro cannons incredibly well, so long as I babysit it. That's the catch. We've seen it happen plenty of times with the Eldari, but close proximity, it means I'm going to have to forfeit and run off with the dang thing. And now we're going to have to get ready for the thick of the fighting here. If I could have fired with all my torpedo salvos, that would soften things up amazingly for me for the start of this battle. But I only get away with like maybe 3-4 torpedoes, when really the entire fleet could probably have done a good salvo, at least a blind shot, and got some good hits in. And they are Grand Cruisers, keep in mind, so they do have the boarding potential of a battleship right now. But let's see. I was hoping that was kind of melted torpedoes, but I think I was aware that they probably could have repaired that. Whereas the melted torpedoes in the front one, I kind of saw a repair, or at least some kind of effect there. And it's going to pay off nicely with the mutiny in a moment. But let's see. I'm keeping an eye out for engine critical hits, because keep in mind my priority is still on the engines, even though I would have liked to destroy the deck. And there's one result right there. I don't have the Kulexis Assassin, which can be a bit of a problem unfortunately, but with these melted torpedoes, it goes without saying how quickly this thing would have been knocked out of the fight, since the flagship's nowhere nearby as well. At least not at the moment, and where it jumps is just outside of rally range, and they just rallied immediately too, so I don't think anything was on a mutiny at that point, alas. And now I'm keeping an eye on more engine critical hits. I just see the one currently of the Grand Cruisers, and damage is kind of nice, but if I can get better torpedo hits, that definitely makes a world of difference. It does honestly become a question whether if I should have tried firing torpedoes on these ones that are already mutinied, mind you, especially when the rally was burnt. That is an honest question, since destroying them helps with morale damage, but at the same time they're no longer contributing to the fight too. And also another factor here is I chose to kind of commit to an engagement as opposed to boosting away, since I was worried about this dragging out on objective front with how quickly the Grand Cruisers can grab points. And so far, yeah, it's not looking good here. I got one ship mutiny, this other one's about to lose, and I don't quite have the damage necessary to finish this off, sadly. I feel I may have gotten aggressive too early, because I like to think that early damage was good. And I did have a good heading to just fly away. Since all the weapons is broadside based, there was very little risk of me being punished heavily in hell. I could have pursued that flagship a tiny bit, force a micro warp jump, and maybe grab those 2 objectives, sure. I would still have been losing on the objective front, but at least I could have played a longer game that way. Okay, match number 2, we're face off against Imperial Navy yet again. An interesting name, a pink taco assassin. I don't know if I should be worried or not. But this is going to be a completely different fleet altogether, for it is 6 cruisers, but they're all Dominators, is the interesting thing to note here. Where my last opponent went with brute force, this one is kind of brute force as well, but they have the possibility of the Nova Cannon doing a lot of work here. That's if they can land multiple Nova Cannons on me. And I'm quite used to dealing with Nova Cannons, and I also have summary execution to at least boost up my combustion gauge incredibly well too. It's been really handy sometimes when they think you're going to run out of combustion gauge, fire another salvo of Nova cans, and you could just recharge that to at least reposition rapidly and at least dodge those salvos. And when they have only 3 shots, as opposed to the convenience of the torpedoes having 6 shots, that can make a world of difference there, especially if you can dodge the first salvo or 2. And while they do have incredible macro cannon damage as well, I do utilize, well actually I don't think I do utilize armor piercing ammo. I stick with the Kulexus Assassin. But even then, my firepower is still competitive, still comparable, especially when you complement it with the torpedoes on top of that. It's just a matter of how well do I hit with said torpedoes. Since we're seeing the exact same type of layout, the decks are being prioritized this time, and it is interesting to see how much of a factor that could have played in the last match, especially since I didn't have a Kulexus Assassin either. Although armor piercing ammo still would have been good for that long range, at least at a close range fight, my strength clearly was in my long range firepower and the torpedoes, which I did fail a little bit on also trying to open up with some torpedo shots at range. I'm a little too conservative with my torpedoes, what can I say? Because I don't have faith that they're going to reliably hit unless I do it in the like crisscrossing type of fashion. And what I mean by that is in Armada 1, especially in Armada 1, it's a lot easier to do. You can just have all your ships look at a point like maybe 9,000 units in front of you, maybe a little bit further than that depending on what you're shooting at. Have them all looking at that, and basically when you fire your torpedoes, they will all intersect, and then ideally if you aim it and plan properly, the torpedoes are not going to hit the prow, but they're going to be arced in such a way that they're actually going to hit the side, the broadside of the cruisers, which at least makes it so much more reliable to hit a fleet that's coming right at you. I don't know if I utilize it the best here, but we might see a little bit of an example of that. Because the best way to intersect those torpedoes is to try and set a move order closer to your fleet. Closer the better, but of course, it depends on where your fleet is at the time you're firing them. And this torpedo arc is still going to be pretty damn good. My opponent is going to be slow to respond because they want to grab this objective, but I am going to get some decent arcs here. How many hits do I get? Because the audio cue suggests I got more hits than it lets on. But still, 200 damage on 3 cruises is still not a bad start. And I am mindful of the Nova cans still. That's where I'm trying to spread out my fleet as much as possible. And I did reposition my fleet a tiny bit to try and have the Overlords and at least the closest 2 ships to at least maximize my firepower. Now the Nova cans are coming on out, and I'm preparing for them. I'm already taking the evasive maneuvers. I'm confident I can dodge these or at least avoid enough that I don't really take hull damage. It still might be annoying to deal with the morale damage I'll take, but if it's only a single Nova can, that at least can easily recover itself. And we dodged the first shot amazingly well as a result. And I don't think I burnt out any of the combustion gauge accidentally, so they're going to be fully charged by the time we have to deal with them again. Although, if I turn to do another torpedo salvo, it can be a little bit tricky. This range around, what is it, 12,000 units, is always the most perilous for me, since if they see me turn towards them and they're the aggressive type of opponent, they might try and rush me down as I'm aiming my torpedoes. And as I already hinted at, trying to shoot them on the prow is a lot less reliable than on their broadside like what they're doing now. Although I do use this stasis bomb as a bit of a shield to give me that window to at least position myself a bit. And while they do have the gas cloud, these torpedoes sadly are poorly aimed, just due to not being able to see where they're at. Both these shots are basically going to be complete misses, or at least really damn close to misses. There may have been a chance of them shooting down one, or hitting at one of the cruisers, but the point defense took care of them incredibly well, it looks like. At least that's what it looks like anyway. Maybe we got a fire assault or 2 on the bottom ones. But now my opponent's getting ready to get close. And thankfully they're getting very aggressive with these Nova cans. And I use this immobility, because keep in mind, they don't move while firing these shots. I use this to try and get in close and prepare for a close range torpedo salvo. since my recharge. My torpedoes are coming up at a perfect time for this opportunity. Amazing start there. Didn't get much of assault boats in, alas, but 2 salvos. Not the most impressive damage for what looked like a full broadside of torpedoes on them, but a good way to start nonetheless. But they are still Dominators. This is kind of their sweet spot as far as their macro cannon damage. And I forced the mutiny there. I do have to collect this assassin. May have overdid it a tiny bit in the lightning strikes, but it does help seal the deal some. And it burns the rally on the flagship too, so if I can get melta torpedoes on that, that's gonna hurt. It's gonna really feel that, and there's not a lot they can do about it. And although I think I burnt almost all my combustion gauge on this maneuver, so I think I'm not in the best position to do damage. Okay, I take that back. Only one was burnt out. But with the stasis bomb, this invites a little bit extra damage, as well as a permanent deck destruction there on that one cruiser. Oh, I take that back. Not only did we destroy a deck, we just eradicate the entire ship. It works out nicely. Now I'm prepping myself for more torpedoes. Melted torpedoes, I don't know if this one burnt his repairs yet or not, but still, 6 fire assaults is damn good, and very aggressive maneuver of ramming them in close. Almost all my decks have been destroyed, so this is still risky if my morale takes unnecessary hits, especially with the flagship being possibly destroyed. It is mutinied from the heavy boarding though, so it's not at risk of dying, but I won't have the convenience of a rally here. It's the big downside here. But with summary execution, I am still in good shape with 2 of these cruisers right now. And with a fire assault, I think this one on the right is about to mutiny and it's going to be out of the fight. And that just leaves the 2 here on the left. Lightning Strike is going to try and force that mutiny there. The flagship, I think, is about to have its rally up pretty soon, though. So it's a matter of trying to kill this thing, or at least force it to not be able to do anything by this point. Oh, I think he just burnt the rally, or a summary execution, since the morale was boosted up. But it's close, it's still tense, but we at least got 1 Overlord, I believe, still at relatively good health here still. And now we force the mutiny on the flagship. That is out of commission. And I think the deck's also been damaged. Oh, never mind. I was trying to look, and again, the ship just explodes on us when I talk about the deck being gone. I guess they go hand in hand, I suppose. But right now I have 1 Tyrant and 1 Overlord still in relatively good shape, and this is where I feel like having the Overlord is going to be really convenient. It can just neutralize these points so much more faster. And we only have 2 frigates to deal with on the far left. Sure, I kind of forgot about my Cobra a little bit, but it at least secured the point for me and allowed me to at least be aware of those 2 Cobras over there. Or at least 2 frigates. And once that point grabs, I'm just going to go over, pay the frigates a visit, and just neutralize these points. I'm in relatively good shape now, despite how tense that may have been against the Dominators.
You have seized a strategic area.
I do rely on those torpedoes, I think, because they may have gotten me the victory there. It's just the trick of knowing when I should go all out on the melted torpedoes, since it can be easily overlooked or easily missed on when my opponent uses repairs or even their rally.
Understood.
And if I can catch that, then that should invite an opportunity to at least get as many fire assaults as possible for that morale damage, and of course, the 90 points of pure burning damage. It definitely pays off early on if you can get those off. But otherwise, I don't think I'm going to drag this out too much longer. My opponent just has these 2 frigates hanging over here. My Overlord is going to spot them, welcome them with open arms, and just ram them to death. And as a bit of an added bonus there, we're going to board them, fire torpedoes, when we get an opportunity for it, I suppose. There's not really much left, I think. At this point, I already destroyed one of the frigates, since they were kind of harassing me at range. And not quite a kill on the boarding front. but it's crippled, it's gonna get shot down. This is the last ship anyway. I'm just letting the broadside cannons do the work for me, and ideally, if I can ram it, that'd be a nice bonus. But it's not gonna happen here. My opponent's being a little bit stubborn, even though I got it well stabilized now with all the points neutralized, or at least captured. Definitely a damn tense match, but dealing with those Nova cannons is not too terrible if you are paying attention to your fleet. That's always kind of the most important factor, because you're not really going to see the Nova cannons firing if you're looking at their fleet. You really need to be paying attention to yours like a Hawkeye, because if you don't respond immediately, that is going to hurt like hell, whether Imperial Navy or Adeptus Mechanicus Nova cannons. Alright, so our third match, yet again, is going to be another Imperial Navy match, and we've had a bit of different variety of fleets, even when you include my one, which is kind of the more traditional type of fleet, in that it could have easily been, it could have just easily been 6 tyrants here, or maybe a dictator to complement it. But in this case, we're going to have 4 battleships, and this time is my adversary. So we're pretty much getting all, as straightforward type of fleets as you can get, all different, and all of them have a single kind of role, a lot of firepower to them. Since the retributions are kind of all about their long-range firepower and sheer hit point pool, the Grand Cruisers and Dominators are all about firepower in general. In different ways, of course, but I feel like the Dominators are as close to the Avengers as you could probably get out of any of the other cruisers at least. They kind of complement each other nicely. And of course we have my fleet that is a little more balanced. I like the versatility on it because after all, when you're trying to build a fleet, it definitely does pay to account for all the different types of matchups. Some you're going to encounter more than others, like apparently here. If I had known, I'd be face off against nothing but Imperial Navy. A little more muscle and a little more brute force might have been more warranted. At least it hinders me a tiny bit with how close and intense these matches can be, since my close range macro weaponry do suffer some for the additional range that I have. Never mind the fact that if I had 6 tyrants here, I could afford like 4 firestorms or 4 swords, which, while they're not much, that is additional firepower that can contribute quite nicely there if they don't get shot down immediately. But otherwise, I am pretty happy with this fleet. It is going to take a lot more refining and fine-tuning, especially with how afraid I am to go up against more Eldari type of fleets, since I feel like my frigates are so damn fragile and easily a weak link there. But with the Corsair matchups that I had, and the one Drukhari matchup, it does not seem to be a huge issue, at least yet. I could be completely wrong. It feels very fragile with what I understand in my previous experience with this game. But I am immediately tipped off that these are probably battleships. I prioritize the generator, not so much the deck, because I want to at least be able to constantly hit their hull if this does drag out some. And I kind of was expecting my opponent to maybe deploy on the right, which is why you're seeing this weird little formation reshuffling here. I want the Overlords to take the point there of the damage, and of course make sure that their firepower is able to shoot at the ships, if I feel like I can at least safely harass them at range. That's another thing I'm going to have to figure out a little bit, but that's the idea. Overlords want to be where they're most likely to engage the opponent, have the resilience and at least absorb the critical hits that much better, and of course, what is it? Well, they don't really have much more troops or more hit points, so that is the main idea at least. And of course the range and dorsal turrets to help complement at least the firepower. And because of this reshuffling, I was not prepared for these torpedoes coming in. I was not listening for them, but I am going to make the endeavor to dodge them. And try as I might, only one cruiser actually gets hit. It burns the repair though, but that is definitely a good trade, I want to argue. Especially if I have maybe my other cruisers kind of get in front to kind of swap it around. Since these are also melted torpedoes, so the one that burnt its repair, if I had maybe had it switch around and stay back, the cruiser behind it could take the hits and then it repairs again. It's a good way to cycle and deny the melted torpedoes at this kind of range. Which is kind of another example why I dislike burning my torpedoes at such a distance, even if I do have 6 charges. But what I do with my torpedoes, two of those salvos are meltas, and the rest are just regular damaged torpedoes, and we're going to get to see the result here. Every single one of them are thankfully getting hits, and I think it burns. I don't know if it burns 3 emergency repairs or not. At least one of them repaired. Okay, I'm looking now. At least 3 of them burnt the repairs, and this would be amazing if I were to commit to an engagement now, but sadly I'm too far away. They're easily going to have that back up by the time we get to a fight. And this is a bit of an odd decision here, but I'm going to turn around into the gas cloud and use this retreating pattern to kind of give me more time to shoot down the torpedoes. It works really nicely with all ahead full. It's just a lot of combustion gauge you burn through if you're not careful. And for my troubles, I only get a single fire assault. For what was, I believe, 3 melted torpedoes? No, I think I may be miscounting that some, but it's very minor damage for me, at the very least. And with this gas cloud, I'm avoiding their long-range fire incredibly well. I just burnt a lot of my combustion gauge doing that maneuver. It's the bit of the downside here. Now, with the torpedoes hitting there, a bit of melted torpedoes, but it's time to get on in aggressive, and since they don't have high energy turn, I'm just going to do a run-by right through them there, ideally. Using the Kulex's Assassin to get that a little bit of additional morale damage there. It would have been best if I got all the broadside boarding and then the flagship lightning strike, but it's still an effective boarding nonetheless. And the idea here was to try and make it difficult for them to focus down a ship with their incredibly slow turning radius. They're still kind of getting the shots on 2 ships there, and I believe, I can't remember, did this flagship just repair or it's about to when I fire this? There was justification why I prioritized it. Okay, it just repaired. Now suddenly I want to kill this flagship. Since I have that confirmation that it's now vulnerable to all the melted torpedoes I can lob at. It's just really awkward because, again, I burnt all my combustion gauge in that maneuver. So this isn't the best arc for me, or at least the best engagement. Definitely not the swiftest. And the plasma bombs thankfully only hit shields, so not nearly as impressive it could have been. And sadly didn't really get much melted torpedoes either, try as I might, but that's going to correct itself in a moment. We got ourselves a nice point blank range shot. And it's a bit of an awkward mess. My opponent has armor piercing ammo, I believe, so this could still really hurt me, especially with the flagship again getting prioritized. But I'm returning the favor too. It is going to kill off its crew, but the fire assault is sure to destroy this thing. This flagship is marked for death. Now I'm just trying to get as much as I can out of this, since I just suffered heavy morale damage right now. And I still did prioritize the generator, ideally so I can constantly get good damage with my macro cannons and not worry about their shields coming back up. So I feel like this is good for me. It's just the Hellfall and the one battleship up top that's going to be a bit awkward. The one in the gas cloud's about to die. This one here has really weak crew, and I'm hoping to board it to death. Hopefully I have enough boarding results, but if I had a little more patience, it's still possible the crew might get killed off, but if I had a little more patience, I could have done more broadside boarding to make sure the crew died. But that flagship, the one ship in the cloud's gone. It burnt to death. We're down to, what is it, 3 cruisers and morale being very tenuous for me. Especially with my crew completely neutered on this one overlord up here. I think that's the overlord. I'm gonna have to pay attention to the visual effect to know for sure. But thankfully, I thought there was debris in the way, but I do choose to scuttle the ship. The shields are still at full strength, and I'm not in a really good arc to kind of start chipping down those shields to get to the hull, because look how close to that thing breaking right now. I would love nothing more, but with the shields absorbing the shots, it took no morale damage, even with the temporary damage on the deck. That would have been perfect. Perfect timing on that deck critical hit, but it wasn't meant to be. And we managed. Yeah, they used encouraging speech, so they did not repair the deck, and these fire assaults are going to force a mutiny. This match is over, but it was by the skin of my teeth. Only the frigate alone is what saved me here. Cause sure, I lost vision. I'm gonna scuttle this other cruiser, but the frigate alone got me that victory. Maybe a little more riskier than necessary. Hard to say how I could have done that better. Ideally not burning my combustion gauge, so I can get far more effective and aggressive torpedoes when I did that run by. I think that hurt me a lot. And I think, with that said, it's time to put the Imperial Navy behind me, and at least my focus on ranking up. Because in my experience with the Azuyani, it seems like it stalls quite heavily on the ranking, so while it seems like I'm incredibly close, I'm gonna cut it off here. The only thing I regret is not being able to do nearly as many matches as I would have liked, because hell, I would have at least liked 3 videos a week, whereas my Azuyani I managed to get away with 4 each week, roughly. But it was still a good time. I really enjoyed playing with the Imperial Navy. I just would have loved to play against Tau more, since I feel like I know what to do there. It's just a matter of putting it to practice, and then ultimately, hopefully, getting that victory.